Mike Norvell has a decidedly different message during today's press conference.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk Seminoles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first win is a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Yesterday, when I was going through stuff, I didn't even get to the press conference Mike had on Saturday after the Miami game. Got to it this morning, and I discussed it quite a bit on the first show I did on Monday. Press conference comes around today, and much to my surprise, it's a totally different tone. They've been through the film. They've went through it as a staff, and he's not very happy. I think he's finally to the point where I'm not going to have this anymore. You're going to see some lineup changes continuing. They had some in the Miami game, but the tone and the point right out the gate was about errors, mental errors by players. It's the first time that I have seen Norvell in his tenure at Florida State. He doesn't just take guys and throw them on the train track, but he's also not exactly going to take all the blame. It was mentioned several times, including his opening statement discussing run gap fits and not being very good. He later brought up how four of them, staying on the same topic, were big busts right in the A gap where there was nobody there. And even when they did clog up the middle, and Miami doesn't run the most complicated run scheme, it's pretty generic. They bounced some outside, and like Florida State often does, they failed to contain the edge. And I'm just using the running game as a defensive measurement here as one example. He mentioned the drops. He mentioned the mental errors by offensive linemen, the communication with the quarterbacks, which he understood, and he made clear that, we got young quarterbacks, but that has to be a lot better. It was the first time he just kind of threw pressure towards the players publicly that I've seen and made it clear that there's going to be some competition. Now, he didn't throw anybody on the train track specifically, but I thought this was a really good development. Here are my thoughts on it, and then I'll get into some of the North Carolina stuff and how this could be a big measurement because they have to win the North Carolina game. I'll get into more of that on Tuesday's show, but North Carolina game is an absolute, unequivocal must-win game for multiple reasons. Again, I'll discuss that on Tuesday's show. But first off, talking about this, the run gap fits were something that came up a lot. Cannot reiterate that enough. That is something they got to figure out because they've got a lot of veterans in the middle of their defense. Why is that still a problem? Is it coaches? Is it players? Is it both? Because it's like the same error over and over. There were just wide open gaps that they're missing. This is generic stuff. And this is major Power 4 football. Really weird. I thought it was odd, and I mentioned it on the live show after the game. Mike just mentioned it in his press conference. This is bizarre. That has to be taken care of. But when you look forward to the North Carolina game coming up, Florida State just had 4 sacks against Miami. That's a talented offensive line. Carolina's got a fairly mobile quarterback, but one that you can get after. North Carolina's not the greatest offensive line in the world. They're okay. They got a heck of a running back, O'Marion Hampton, somebody we'll talk about quite a bit this week. But there's a chance there. The defensive line just has to be more consistent against the run. They're really good at getting after QB. Got to be more consistent against the run. The other thing with this is special teams. The one thing he didn't talk about, because he doesn't really have to, and they just deserve applause, special teams are really good at Florida State. Kicker, punter, obviously. Coverage units are pretty good, and we've had a 100-yard return for a touchdown or whatever it was earlier from Mr. Singleton. So they're good there. If they can just clean up their run gap fits, they can be in any game. It's amazing how much Florida State has changed in a very short period of time. So I'm curious about that. Offensively, though, the disaster up front. He talked about Rizzi playing. I get the sense even Mo's job's not safe. That's crazy because, he's a 6th-year senior at center, but he hasn't played great. I don't think anybody's is up front. That's just my perspective. He didn't say Mo better be careful or anything, but they're in a spot now where they're just going to try whatever. They're 1-7. I don't think Norvell's the greatest coach in the world, but at 1-7, I don't blame him for feeling this way. I'm wholeheartedly in agreement. Still, it's interesting. He did mention something, and I wasn't sure on this number. Florida State has used 7 different starting offensive lines this year. That's never going to work. And it's not because they wanted to. A lot of it's due to injury. Unfortunately, you still got to try to patch it together to the best of their ability. They haven't maximized, nor have they recruited to their ability out of the high school ranks to make it better. But that is a problem. They're going to have to find something, though, Rizzy or whoever it is they want to use. I know Early's played quite a bit at guard. Somebody's got to step up and not just be serviceable. They got to be great. And again, he's talking about competition to practice and what they're seeing on film. I would not be surprised if we saw our 8th different lineup. He brought up how Florida State at Saturday night and today's press conference, they missed chances on the other side of the 50, some deep shots, the over route that Kentron ran that was completely busted by Miami. Luke didn't throw it. That can't happen. He dodged it, and it was nice about it, but that just can't happen. He made a preconceived notion. I am completely convinced of that because that's what young quarterbacks do. And then he threw the wheel route, which wasn't even open, instead of throwing to the guy that's why. If he goes to his second read, it's a touchdown. Florida State got burned, even though they made the right play call. That's not a coaching fault on that particular play. Luke's got to be better there. So those are some of the things that he brought up that I thought were interesting. When I come back, I want to take some of his points and at least give a beginning point for where we're at with the North Carolina game, because this is a beatable team. I've studied them quite a bit the last couple of days. They beat up on Virginia this past weekend. Virginia is terrible, 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 terrible. They had 7 yards rushing against North Carolina after the week before North Carolina gave up 360 to Georgia Tech. North Carolina's defense is not good, and Virginia ran for 7. So there's a chance here to get after North Carolina. I want to talk about that. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more from the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Have you downloaded the GameTime app yet? If not, here's your chance, and here's why. Number 1, GameTime allows you the option to have all-inclusive pricing. All you have to do is turn on the feature with the toggle switch inside the app. Number 2, if you like to know exactly what you're getting, this is the app for you, because once you find a game and a ticket you think you're interested in, but you may not be sure, select that seat and see the view to the pitcher's mound, to the end zone, to midfield, whatever it may be. Or if you're in a movie theater, get an idea of what it looks like. GameTime allows you to do that from your phone right in your hand. It's very easy with GameTime, and that's why you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for your first purchase with $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Will Florida State beat North Carolina? Based on the press conference today from Mike Norvell at the Florida State facilities, I think that this game is going to have some interesting twists to it. Number 1, I think Florida State's going to be more liberal with their substitutions, maybe even their starters. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do, because unfortunately, this is another mobile quarterback they're going against. Jacoby Criswell. He's a veteran quarterback. He's been around, was in North Carolina, transferred, came back. This is a guy that can give you problems. He threw for 290 or whatever against Virginia. They're terrible. Matter of fact, he was 19 of 30, 63.3%, 293 yards and 2 touchdowns, 0 picks against Virginia. But they are absolutely atrocious on defense. So I'm not shocked. But Florida State has a couple advantages. And this is something that Norvell and several of the different people around the program know, and he didn't have to go into it very much at this press conference. They can rush the passer. North Carolina, they're okay at pass protection. Looking up the stats, I mean, again, this isn't anything that's crazy. Florida State had 4 against Miami, by the way, which obviously a very talented group, Whereas Virginia, they're not going to get after the quarterback much. Criswell had a lot of time. They're okay up front. They're like in the 50s, 60s in sacks allowed. Florida State should be able to get after them. Talking to the press today, though, again, going back to the press conference to get ready for UNC, I get a sense that he's pretty happy with the back end. And I'm just kind of summarizing. He had a long statement about the defense. I was pretty comfy with where he was with it. I don't get to see the vertical film or the overhead film from the end zone that they do. So I was curious what he said about that more than anything else. There wasn't anything glaring that he brought up to my perspective. I'm also curious if that continues. North Carolina's got a few pretty good playmakers and one of the best running backs in the country in the backfield. So it brings up the question, and he hasn't really gotten into this. He's not going to talk much about it, but are they going to put 7 in the box and force North Carolina to throw? Well, Marion Hampton's an NFL running back, period. NFL running back. Or will they mix and match, or will they play pass defense, take their, I don't want to say take their medicine, but allow Hampton to run for 100, 150, but they're going to struggle in the red zone when it crams up, make them kick field goals. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. They might even mix up that whole bag throughout the football game. I'm curious about that. Norvell's common theme, though, about competition, the opportunity, we got to get better, practice, everybody's got to do this and that. Like, you could tell something's coming. And I don't know who's coming in and out of the lineup. And I don't know if snap counts are going to change a lot, but I find it very interesting. I'm just really excited about this game. And again, I'm going to break it down more specifically tomorrow, but I don't see any way that Florida State loses this game and this season ends even remotely good. Norvell in particular is in a bit of a panic. You could tell that from the press conference after the Miami game. He's a little frantic today, but more like, okay, this is going to happen or else. So the players are going to be like, you know what? If we don't win this game, when's it going to happen? They got Notre Dame next. They're not beating Notre Dame. So they need to figure out a way to win this game. Well, the only other game they might win is Charleston Southern. Florida right now, if I had to pick, Florida would beat Florida State by double digits. They have a quarterback that's ready. They got 2 of them. They're not very good either, but they're better than Florida State. So if they don't beat North Carolina, no offense to Charleston Southern, I don't care about that game. Is Florida State going to beat another Division I team? I would say no. They have to win this North Carolina game. Tomorrow, we'll talk more about the Tar Heels, Jacoby Criswell, Marion Hampton, their defense, which is okay, and how Florida State can attack them, because I'm a little more happy after hearing Norvell's press conference on Monday, because they're going to try some different things. They went with the same philosophy for a long time. At quarterback, it didn't work. They finally get a chance to DJ out to try some different things. I'm curious to see if they really throw mud at the wall this weekend against North Carolina, because if not, when's Florida State going to win another Division I game? I will talk to you all tomorrow on Tuesday.